Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, depending on where you are in the world. And welcome to the final session of today's Enterprise Connect Virtual Summit, Connecting with Microsoft Teams Direct Routing, broadcast by Informa. Our closing panel will recap the major issues around Microsoft Teams Direct Routing and discuss the paths forward with this technology. I'm Eric Kraft with Enterprise Connect, and I'll be your moderator today. We have just a few announcements before we begin. Here they are. The session is designed to be interactive. The dock of widgets at the bottom of your screen will allow you to learn about our speakers, download resources, share this webinar via social media outlets, and participate in the Q&A session that takes place at the end of our presentation. Slides will advance automatically throughout the event. So in this particular session, we're just going to have a conversation. There really isn't going to be much slideware, but the console will be controlled here centrally. You can also download a copy of any of the slides from today's presentations from the resources widget in the console. Toward the end of our session, we'll ask you to complete our survey found on the right-hand side of your screen. Please take a minute to fill this out before leaving us today, as your feedback will provide us with valuable information on how we can improve future events. Lastly, if you are experiencing any technical problems, please click the Help widget found at the bottom of your screen or type your issue into the Q&A area, and we'll be glad to offer one-on-one assistance. So here are today's speakers for our final session. Our moderator, you know him from the other sessions, is Kevin Kieller. He's co-founder of enableUC, and as far as we're concerned, the leading expert on independent expert on Microsoft Teams. Kevin's done an extensive amount of implementation work as well as a lot of programs with Enterprise Connect, and it was just a vast well of information and insight on Teams. He's going to have a conversation with Ben Lee, who is the Microsoft Technology Lead for Consulting at LoopUp, and with Shawn Cooke, who's Senior Product Specialist for UCaaS and CCaaS at Masergy. And with that, Kevin, I'm going to turn it over to you and let you start the conversation.
Well, great. Well, thanks very much, Eric, and thanks for that kind introduction. The good news is I don't have to answer the tough questions right now. I'm just going to ask Shawn and Ben the tough questions. And Shawn and Ben, thank you, for your time and being here to kind of share your expertise and experience. In the keynote, I talked about, direct routing as one of the two ways you can bring PSTN, connectivity into Teams. Let's start by talking, I mentioned and at a very high level that, direct routing provides some additional flexibility and choice for people looking to add voice to Teams. Maybe you can expand upon that and add a little bit more detail. Shawn, why don't we start with you?
Sure. I think the versatility piece really applies to how it's being applied, especially on an enterprise scale, as far as international reach, right? Getting it's one thing to decide to use the Microsoft Cloud PBX as that platform for feature functionality and so forth, but the question becomes the calling plan, right? The telecom spend, and the consistency that you're able to potentially get by bringing your own carrier in a direct route option to give you that flexibility as far as global reach, right? Maybe expanding above and beyond what Microsoft might be providing in their own calling plan alternative. So I think first and foremost, that's probably the thing that most attracts folks, certainly pricing, but we'll keep that maybe to another topic. But right. I really think so. And agree. I would also argue if the question is about versatility, that certainly feature functionality that one might derive as far as reporting, analytics, maybe even some administrative access and control over those that calling plan as it relates to, traffic moving in and out of the PSTN through the Microsoft PBX. So, Ben, I don't know if you might have a better answer, but.
Yeah, no, sure. But yeah, thanks, Kevin, for having us along. I guess the main thing to me is, you look at telephony and Teams, and it seems that you have two high-level choices. You have calling plans or direct routing, and the key thing with direct routing is you have multiple methods of delivery, and it's choice. You can choose to deploy gateways yourself. You can choose to manage them. You might need to have gateways, that you have to look after because you've got integration. There might be some challenging systems that you absolutely have to keep, inside your org. But you can also choose to run those out of Azure or another cloud provider if you want to, or you can choose to take it as a service from another provider. And you can mix and match all of those different models to fulfill whatever your needs as a business are. It doesn't have to be that you go down the calling plan route and you're stuck that way. It doesn't mean that you have to go down direct routing on-prem, running it yourself and stick that way. You can kind of flex between these different things. I mean, I think we'd probably all agree that the types of connectivity we had to Skype for Business Online, before direct routing in Teams was a thing, were not particularly pleasant. Direct routing is by far a better solution. And to me, it's that key around choice and flexibility.
Okay, that's useful. I think, for the audience, I mean, I know, Masergy and LoopUp, both organizations have a tremendous amount of experience deploying Microsoft Teams. For the audience members that are listening in, like, what kind of lessons learned, or, kind of what are some of the things that in your experience that they should be thinking about or should avoid, or, how can we collectively, save them a little bit of pain? And Ben, why don't I direct that to you? What do you wish, what do you know now that you didn't know when you started your first Teams implementation?
I guess there's three things for me. Number one, it's always the network, right? So don't underestimate, the amount of network preparation. Like, it's fine that you can follow the Microsoft docs and you can open up the right ports and protocols on your firewall, but there's a whole bunch of other stuff that you don't necessarily need to do. Teams will generally find a way of connecting and working, but that doesn't mean that it's doing it in an optimal way. It might be over TCP, not UDP.
Right.
So you want to make sure you do the groundwork on your network. And it doesn't need to be onerous, but you do need to consider, what sort of proxies you've got, what sort of paths to the internet you've got, how your DNS breaks out. So that would be number one, is don't underestimate the network. Number two would be consider your endpoints. Again, it doesn't matter if you've got great PCs, great computers, great network, super fast internet, low latency, all of that. If you don't have good audio going into the Teams client from, a certified device or headset or something that is providing good quality sound in, doesn't matter who you've got as your provider out the other end, doesn't matter what's happening in the middle, you're not going to have good audio in there. And then the third one is the user side of things. It can be very tempting these days that there's a lot of kind of rapid Teams deployment where people are just being enabled, they're being turned on, and then they just have to kind of get on with it. Don't underestimate kind of just doing some baseline training and just letting people know the sort of stuff you can do, because Teams, you can make phone calls, you can put someone on hold, you can transfer it, but there's things like group call pickup and these other sort of neat features that it's very easy to not realize how they're supposed to work or how they might apply to your business, so your users might not be taking advantage of all of the functionality that's there.
Okay, no, those are definitely three good tips. I mean, Shawn, any, what lessons has Masergy learned?
I do, and actually one's in line with at least a couple of the questions that we've already seen come up. So
right. It's
one of the things that I wanted to talk about, and that's migration strategies. So what we're also seeing are organizations, whether it's because of the pandemic or not, certainly that is a huge reason and motivator that we've all experienced, but migrating away from premise-based phone systems. So I think as far as this idea of lessons learned, you certainly need to go in very pragmatically, especially if it's international telephony that's involved, but looking for a service provider partner that's going to actually be able to work with you on a migration strategy away from there. I've seen a number of times folks trying to use, which Ben was right, you can actually use SBC gateways creatively and so forth. But if you've got the right direct route PSTN provider feeding Microsoft Teams PBX, you don't necessarily have to do that. So speaking for my own organization, one that can provide traditional SIP trunking to that legacy PBX system, but also provide direct route trunking to the Microsoft Teams PBX platform from a consistent carrier switch platform, thus providing a prudent, measured migration strategy. So there are means and methodologies to answer the two folks that posted these questions. But back to your question, that's the kind of thing you ought to be thinking about. Ben mentioned network. Spot on, absolutely be thinking about that. But in line with that are some of these questions that we're seeing, right? What does the whole picture look like as I make this transformation, away from a premise-based system? The only other one that I would think is a pragmatic thing to be thinking about is really making sure that you've taken a look at the PBX feature functionality, understanding what it means and what it takes to administer that platform. Certainly Microsoft is improving on their platform and expanding on the feature functionality, but one ought to make sure they really understand as far as shell scripting skills and these kind of things to do the kind of things you want to be able to do with the Microsoft PBX, and quite frankly, making sure that you know if there's any particular gaps. Especially, if I may, one last point for the folks that were asking these questions. Folks that have premise-based systems are used to having deep enterprise-grade feature functionality at their fingertips, right? They may hate managing a premise-based PBX and all that comes with, but now they're moving into this cloud. There ought to be some comparable, exchange there, not just the promise of cloud telephony and everything that it integrates with Teams and so forth, but those day-to-day visceral feature functions that their user community is used to. So that's what I would say is a lesson learned.
That's great. And I just want to amplify one of the points because it ties back to something I said in the keynote, and just in case some of the audience wasn't there. Not only do you need to get it to work, but you need to think about, how are you going to manage all this feature functionality moving forward, right? So, I think that's one of the things you're calling out too, Shawn. In terms of, one of the things I said in the keynote is the good news is Microsoft Teams is a platform, and, third parties like such as both of your organizations can build on it and leverage and augment it. What are some of the common things that you're seeing customers ask for or want to do that are presently gaps in Teams? And then how does your organization kind of help fill in those gaps? And maybe we'll go back to you, Shawn, just to start us off with that.
Sure. Boy, where do I start with that one? I think, and again, speaking for my own organization, as you asked me to, number one, it goes back to Ben's point as far as transport. Masergy certainly has a well-known service offering as it relates to global networking and SD-WAN strategies. It's primarily what we're known for. So I think that is certainly one aspect that we see people asking about. Do I need to be worried about that? Masergy's even got methodologies because Microsoft Teams is a public access platform, methodologies for actually working with that. That's another discussion. So I think that's the one thing that we see our clients asking about, but it's mainly because that's really one of our fortes. The other thing I think we see is certainly the professional services. For us, we don't sell Microsoft licensing. Some of my friends also in the market here do have that, and I think that's definitely a leg up. So it's something that clients ought to be thinking about. Can I get the direct route? Can I get everything that Ben and Shawn have been talking about? But can I also get the added benefit there? I'm trying to think. The only other thing I can think of is as far as what they're asking in any potential gaps. Things like contact center. Microsoft Teams has a call queuing, but we get a lot of folks that are asking for more true ACD call queuing, right? Skills-based routing, that's not full-blown Cloud Contact Center. And then there's some of those one-offs in relation to whether it's POTS replacement, common area extensions, overhead paging systems. So we're starting to see some of these miscellaneous things where our organization is able to blend Microsoft Teams direct route trunking with a hosted solution, all from the same platform. So we're able to create these hybrid where we can still create a single enterprise, but really have kind of the 80-20 rule at play. So.
Okay. And Ben, from your clients and, kind of what gaps are they typically asking you to fill?
I think, Shawn mentioned the main one that we see, which is around contact center functionality. And it's, sometimes you have a requirement where a company thinks it is a full-blown contact center they need, and actually it's not. And it's the same sort of paradigm shift that you have to apply between a traditional PBX and Teams of, some of the functionality that was done by a contact center, you might be able to achieve with, the call queue and a bit of creativity in the behavior there. But absolutely, it doesn't do the stuff like skills-based routing and, the kind of deeper, more complicated things. But that's where then you can augment that, and you either do that, if you're taking your direct routing through a provider, having a provider who can bolt a contact center solution alongside it, be that on net and Teams integrated, or be that off net and part of, whatever their back end system might be, or you could potentially deploy something yourself still. Again, it's back to that choice. There's a lot of different options. And again, that's where sort of you can get lost trying to navigate and understand all of those different options, I suppose. The second one would be call recording. Call recording is something that comes up fairly frequently, and yes, that can sometimes tie in with the contact center technology, but other times it might just be, for a particular compliance reason, or it might just be an internal policy or process that these group of people have to be recorded. And with that one, fortunately, the APIs that are relatively new from Microsoft means that you are starting to see software solutions that are Teams compliant, that work in the particular way that Teams allows, and so that gap is starting to be plugged natively inside Teams. And then the third one is likely to be attendant consoles. That's always been something that's a little bit of a, how do you do it? Like, great, you can do kind of call queues for a reception type workflow, but the Teams client isn't necessarily optimized for that. And again, the challenge with that one is we're kind of, beholden to Microsoft for the APIs. They're working on them. They're nearly there. There's several vendors who have software that is, just ready for Microsoft to press the go button, but kind of need that to happen really. And again, there are some things you can do to work around it, but it's not, it doesn't necessarily operate in the same way that, whatever the company is used to has. But it's kind of, it swings and roundabouts. You weigh up all the benefits and the other things that it does do that are different versus the things that are challenging.
Okay, well, maybe sticking with you, Ben, but maybe like having a shorter answer, just so we can get through the questions. Somebody was asking, like on these call queues or automated attendance, if LoopUp helps set that up and get that working on an ongoing basis, is that something LoopUp helps with when there needs to be, kind of ongoing changes and that type of thing? So you assist with the ongoing management piece?
If you want the short answer, it's yes.
Okay.
And the slightly elaborated answer is that the offering we endeavor to provide is a managed service. So it is, anything to do with the Teams telephony aspects, we can deal with that, be it stuff on our platform, be it stuff on your Teams platform. But, the stuff on the Teams platform, if you want to make a change, if you want to do it yourself, if you're confident around the admin console, great. If not, raise a ticket and we'll do it.
Okay. And Shawn, with Masergy, you talk about building these, these robust, integrated solutions. So if you build it for me and my organization, and then I need help going forward, talk to me about how Masergy kind of helps me.
Same as Ben. If you want the short answer, no.
Okay. Yep.
But that doesn't have to be a negative. Basically, we focus, as I mentioned, on global transport, global telephony, everything that surrounds that. We do have a professional services practice that we can, engage at a cost for the Microsoft Teams, but day-to-day management, as I stated transparently, it's not really our business. And so again, typically customers either take that on themselves or we introduce them through a professional engagement. Yeah.
Okay, no, and I think that's useful. Yeah, that's useful to know, kind of where the expertise of your organizations is predominantly focused. One of the things that comes
Ben
up,
and I pointed out, yeah.
Yeah, no, that's fantastic. One of the things that comes up is, Microsoft on their core offering offers 3 nines, and people have experienced either Teams being down or pieces of Office 365 being down, or Active Directory being down, so you effectively can't authenticate. So even if it's up, you can't log in.
Right.
What are some of the resiliency or business continuity options that, beyond Teams that you can provide? And I guess, we'll start with you, Shawn.
Yeah, and actually that's perfect segue, right? Because when I say that Masergy focuses more on those methodologies, that's a perfect example. So with our carrier switch platform, we look at ways either on a group level or on a per number level to actually apply PBX-like features at that point before it ever hits the Microsoft Teams PBX. I mean, these can be practical day-to-day functions like cloud-based auto attendant message before it hits the PBX, or a hunt group mechanism that does a time of day routing to a pilot number. But of course, that can apply to resiliency strategies at a call level. Certainly, there's at a network TCP/IP level. The interconnects that we established with Microsoft are per their specifications, and so there's redundancies built into there. But to your point, full platform, now you're looking at numbers coming in for a particular DID, a particular pilot number that must be handled. So again, it's really looking at how we can reroute those, whether it's a automatic remote call forward to a calling service or to a separate trunk. So there are some creative things that we can do along those lines for resiliency. Yeah.
Okay. And Ben, anything to add on the resiliency, business continuity?
No, I mean, the problem you will have with all the cloud-based solutions, like Teams, is what happens if that core solution is down. And exactly to Shawn's point, if you need to have resiliency beyond that, it's, if you're rolling that solution yourself, that's quite a lot of complicated stuff to consider. If you've got a partner who has their own voice network, then you should be asking what they are doing at the layer below whatever it is that interfaces to Teams. So exactly like Shawn's talking about, the ability to intercept calls, direct, divert them, how that is managed, how quickly you can push a button and things go off in a different place. So yeah, again, there's a bunch of stuff you can do at that platform layer.
So let's talk a little bit about, I'm a big fan of doing the math, and, if we talk about the financial model, I mentioned in the keynote that one of the disadvantages of Microsoft Calling Plan, I mean, some of it was coverage and, flexibility and things like that, but one of the, disadvantages is for larger firms, the financial model, is sometimes not very attractive. Direct routing, we said, gives you more choice, and I think some of these are choices as well in terms of the financial model. What should people be thinking about, or what should they understand in terms of the different, maybe financial model offerings and options that they have? And I guess we'll go to you, Shawn, to kind of start us in this area.
Respectfully, I thought it was Ben's turn, but I'll take that. But I will look. This is where, in my opinion, where the rubber really hits the road.
Right.
One ought to have all the things that Ben and I talked about, prudent about this change, but it really does, in my mind, and very regularly come down to cost. I would also say, too, that the phrase direct route gets used through marketing it's being thrown around a lot. I believe LoopUp and Masergy have a very similar model that we are providing PSTN access as a call plan alternative. Not saying that other folks don't do that, but it's very, very much a trunking model on an international global scale, both LoopUp and Masergy. So with that said, to answer your question, Masergy's approach to this in that vein is to take a traditional concurrent call path model, meaning that I want to work with you to right size that spend. One may have 2,000 Teams users, but let's be honest, a lot of the interactions happening on the Teams platform. It's not happening with the PSTN, depending on your business and your call behaviors. But again, let me help you right size that where 2,000 users may only need 150 sessions at a time, right? And then look at bundling techniques that help to give you more predictable monthly spend as it relates to telecom. So we're seeing some drastic cost savings as it relates to just good old-fashioned PSTN access and telephony, right? Calling plans. And I think LoopUp has a very similar, slightly different but similar idea. Ben?
Yeah, that's right. We don't go off concurrency. We have sort of, depending on the geographies that you have, there's effectively like a small platform access cost, and then there are bundles, but instead of it being bundles of minutes, we've got the term value bundles, where it is bundles of credits that you're paying, because the problem with kind of minute bundles is you can end up with, you have to model quite accurately to get the best value out of it, what your spend is going to be. Whereas, value bundles are kind of, if you're buying $15 worth of credit at a $10 price, for example, obviously subject to whatever scale, but that means that, you're a little bit more aware of what your charge and things look like. I think, for us, the reason we've kind of got the platform access charge and the per user model is that the intention is, that it's that managed service component that, any of the looking after or the management or the maintenance or the support, of the per user stuff, is why we price that way. And if I may, yeah, sorry. So it's just
I was just going to say.
Go on.
Sorry. Let me just. I was just going to say an interesting question came in, and I think this is relevant. I talked a little bit about this in the keynote, which is, okay, this is all fine and dandy, but why do you even need PSTN access? And the question comes in is, do either of you see this as something that's dying off? Certainly, in our experience. Maybe a third of communication, like lots of communication happens internally or in meetings or even externally over the top, federated, and that's probably going up. Do either of you forecast and predict the death of the PSTN? And if so, when's that going to happen? But so, Ben, we'll go back to you. Is the PSTN dying?
A slow death. It's not something that's going to disappear at any point soon. I mean, look how many companies still have fax machines. Unfortunately, those are things that are part of your organization for particular things. And I'm not saying that is where I see the PSTN heading anytime soon. Right. But if you look far into the future, it's all down to the availability of connectivity. As things stand at the moment, the reason that PSTN is still such a big part of this is, with PSTN, you have a phone number, you dial that phone number, and that phone or that device or that thing rings, and someone can pick it up and they can talk to you. And you don't care whether that's someone in Teams, you don't care whether that's an analog device on the end of a piece of string at the back of a factory. It doesn't matter. It's like, that's got a number and you can call it. And one of the advantages with Teams, I guess, over Skype for Business and its predecessors is things like the mobile app does work significantly better. The mobile app really does work, that you get a lot more Teams calls coming through on mobile, but you still find yourself in situations where, the Wi-Fi isn't good enough or the connectivity isn't good enough or it doesn't work. Whereas, the PSTN, even on mobile phones, that's why there's this massive infrastructure of mobile masts and everything that, you can fall back to voice over a cellular network. So PSTN, no, I don't think it's going away anytime particularly soon, but if you cast far enough forward, sure, it will, it will ultimately fade away, but not, we're nowhere near there yet.
Okay, and same question to you, Shawn. Is the PSTN dying?
Yeah, I pretty much have the exact same answer as Ben, and I'm not dodging it because I find this to be a fascinating topic. And in a sense, it will never die. It just is evolving into something else. The PSTN is becoming more and more IP-centric anyway. And so you see that. But for all of those TCP/IP nerds out there, the idea of phone numbers is really just a different form of identification. It's a different type of addressing schema. And so even with the internet, we don't say, hey, I'm going to email Bob's IP address. We use things like DNS, right? That are human friendly. I think Ben is spot on. If access gets better and better, and you're using platforms like Teams, like FaceTime, like Messenger, whatever the medium is, underneath the covers, it's still all forms of addressing. That's never going to go away. The internet will evolve. The platform we call the internet will continue to evolve. But there's always going to be, to my mind, far in the future, who knows, there's always going to be some need for that human interface to translate to ones and zeros, if you will, right? So in that respect, I don't think it'll ever go away, but it's certainly evolving. And Ben is exactly right. It's nothing, but it's starting. How many of the LECs are now discontinuing PRIs or discontinuing POTS? So it's certainly happening. And I think on the wholesale side, in the back end of the PSTN, the intricate mess that it is on the back side of that, where the magic happens, it's becoming more and more IP centric to my mind anyway. So that's my
with that, I think I think we are pretty much out of time. I would definitely want to thank Ben and Shawn for sharing your expertise and experience. Hopefully to the audience, there was some points that will save you some pain by learning from some of their expertise. If there was a question that didn't get answered, our panelists will be provided with copies of that. And to the audience, thank you for your time. And with that, I will turn it back to you, Eric, for some closing comments. Or I won't turn it back to Eric. Eric, are you there?
Guess what? I was on mute.
Okay.
I apologize, everybody. Sorry about that. We all know how that goes these days. So I apologize for that. Thanks everybody for attending. Thanks Shawn and also Ben for having this great conversation. Kevin, really appreciate you sharing your knowledge throughout the day. This is obviously, we've had a great attendance throughout the day. This is obviously a topic that enterprise communications folks are going to be engaging with very seriously throughout this year. I'm sure the whole issue of Teams, direct routing is really kind of one of the best ways into Teams once you get past the rollouts that everybody probably has gone through over the course of last year in the pandemic. So we really appreciate everybody who spoke today and shared their information with us. As a reminder to our audience, this is the first in a series of half-day seminars on Microsoft Teams that we'll be doing throughout the year. Our next one is going to be on April 14th. Again, it'll be similar half-day type of program. Kevin, I believe, is on the hook to lead us through that one as well. We're going to focus on using Microsoft for your voice services. That's obviously, we've seen today, just something that everyone is trying to figure out the path forward on as we try to get things to whatever the next new normal is. So thanks, everybody. In the next 24 hours, the audience is going to get a follow-up email that'll give you a link to listen to the replay of this. Please share that with anybody who wasn't able to attend today. This webinar is copyrighted by Informa. The presentation materials are owned by, copyrighted by Enterprise Connect, Masergy, and LoopUp. And the individual speakers are solely responsible for their content and their opinions. So on behalf of Kevin, Ben, and Shawn, I'm Eric Kraft. Thanks for your time and have a great day.